Hi there, I'm the Dutch Silver Lion, and today I'm going to explain the history of E Jönsson and Bröderna Jönsson. There have been a lot of people on the internet, including myself, who tried to gather information about their knife but were unsuccessful. So if you have stumbled across this video hoping to find more information about Bröderna or E Jönsson, I think I might be able to help. Now before we begin, I must thank Thomas Eriksson, product manager of Moronif and grandson to KJ Eriksson himself. He has provided me with most of the information I'm about to share with you. Without him, I would not have been able to make this video. To start our journey, we have to go back to March 11th of 1839. It was on this day that Jöns Persson was born in the town of Sollerun, which is part of the municipality or commune of Mora. Jöns grew up to be a farmer who also started his own workshop in Östnor around the 1880s or 1890s. There he made knives for his own personal use, which he stamped with JPS, making him one of the first knife makers of Mora. Jöns had a son called Anders Jonsson, who subsequently had 4 sons of his own called Johan, Erik, Anders and John Jonsson. Unfortunately, Johan Jonsson, Anders' firstborn son, wouldn't live longer than 6 months. Now, I presume that after Jöns Persson died on December 17, 1908, his son Anders Jonsson took over his workshop. This tradition continued when Anders Jonsson passed away on March 16, 1932, and his oldest living son Erik Jonsson took over the workshop. During 1936, Erik started producing his own knives which he stamped E Jönsson, and around the 1940s his brothers joined him in production. That is why from that point out the company was known as Bröderna Jönsson, which translates to the Jonsson brothers. Important to note though, they did not immediately change the knife stamps from E Jönsson to Bröderna Jönsson. They continued to create knives up until the 1980s. Sadly, Erik Jonsson passed away on August 16, 1984 at 85 years old. He was followed by his brother John, who passed away on April 9, 1986 at 80 years old. And soon thereafter, the last brother died as well. Anders Jonsson passed away on November 28, 1987 at 86 years old. Anders' death marked the end of the Jonsson brothers, but that was not the end for the company. After the passing away of the Jonsson brothers, John Erik Jonsson, first name Erik, son of John Jonsson, took over the workshop with his cousin Holger Georg Jonsson, first name Holger, son of Anders Jonsson. Although the company is still known as Bröderna Jönsson, from that moment on, the knives were no longer stamped Bröderna Jönsson, but E Jönsson, just like at the beginning of production back in 1936. According to Thomas, the workshop still produces knives today, albeit on a very small scale. He's even said that Moronif makes more knives in a day or two than Erik does in a year. Erik and Holger work part-time, which isn't strange considering Erik is 69 years old and Holger is 92 years old as of the making of this video. Thomas told me that he doesn't know where the men sell their knives and that Moronif doesn't notice them on the market at all. In an article I'll mention in a second, it's said that Erik's knives are mainly exported to Norway as souvenir knives, but I haven't been able to find any stores that sell them. As far as I know, Erik doesn't have a web shop or anything of the sort. Thomas even told me that Erik usually hangs up the phone if someone calls him who doesn't speak Swedish. On the Norwegian news site Dagbladet, there is an article about Erik. I'll link it down below. In this article, Erik is asked if either of his sons are interested in taking over the company, but Erik can't confirm or deny this, which makes me fearful that the Bröderna Jönsson's days might be numbered. But for now, Erik and Holger are still going strong in a small workshop in Östnor. Now, let's have a look at the knife that I have here. I'll take you in for a closer look. Now, if it weren't for Thomas, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what I have here. But fortunately, he sent me 2 PDFs of old Bröderna Jönsson knife catalogs. If we have a look at this catalog from 1947, we can see that I have a Täljknivar, which roughly translates to carving knife. Now let's take a look at the material and design of the knife. The handle is made of birch with the classic red paint, although when compared to this more classic No.1, the paint on the Jonsson appears to be just a bit lighter. The blade is stamped out of a sheet of metal, and you can still see that on the spine here. The steel is probably a carbon steel, just like the Mora Classic. But I can't be sure. As we can see, Mora knife stamps their blades with the steel type, whereas the Jonsson knife only has the brand. The blade has a Scandi grind with a micro bevel. The blade type is slightly up for debate. The web shop I bought my Mora Classic from said it has a clip point, but as you can see there are no bevels on the spine near the tip like the old models did. That is why I would refer to this blade as a sharp drop point. As you can see on the bottom of the knife, it has a Rattail Tang instead of the partial tang like the modern Mora Classic knives. I personally like this. Knives with a Rattail Tang make me feel like they will be able to handle more compared to a partial tang knife. But this is just a feeling I have. I can't confirm whether this is actually true. Now, when we compare the Unison Sheath to the Mora knife sheath, we can see that the Unison Sheath is made from a shinier and possibly cheaper material. Here I have a picture of the inside of the sheath, and as you can see there is a lot of material flaking. Also, when I got the sheath, it was pretty dirty on the inside. I'm not sure what the story behind that is. Also, when we look at the attachment system on the sheath, we can see that it does not have a belt loop. It only has a big hole so that you can hang it from a button, like with the other Mora knives. Now, if you're wondering what this little hole at the bottom here is for, apparently this has no function except for preventing that this slot tears down all the way to the bottom here. Now, I do like the E Jönsson knife, but fresh out of the box it does have some errors. If we have a look at the tip of the blade, we can see these odd grooves on the bevel. Now, my guess is that this is why a micro bevel was added, because due to the micro bevel, the grooves won't affect cutting performance. Also, at the tip along the spine there seems to be a stamping error. There's a little bit of sharp material still protruding out further than the rest of the spine. Now, these errors are nothing too awful. In fact, you can take care of these issues yourself quite easily. Well, that concludes my review of the E Jönsson Mora Sweden knife, and my explanation of the history of Erik Jönsson and the Jonsson brothers. If you came here looking for answers on your knife, I hope I have been able to fill you in on what you wanted to know. If you came here because you like my content, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Once again, I would like to thank Thomas Eriksson from Mora Knife for helping me out by supplying information and pictures for the video. I've really enjoyed making this video as I'm quite fascinated by the Jonsson history and the legacy of Mora knives. But now it's time for me to sign off. I'm the Dutch Silver Lion and I wish you a wonderful day.